Hey there, garden lovers! Do you ever feel like your garden is just not giving you the results you hoped for? Well, in today's video, I'm sharing the 7 organic gardening mistakes that cost me my harvest, and how you can avoid them. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let's talk about one of the most common mistakes that many new gardeners make: overwatering or underwatering. It seems like a simple concept. Water the plants, right? But honestly, it's a bit more complicated than that, and it took me a while to figure out the balance. I remember in my early days of gardening, I thought that giving my plants a good long soak every day would ensure they thrived. I would drag the hose around the garden, pouring water on every plant, thinking I was doing them a huge favor. But here's the thing, watering too much actually does more harm than good. I learned that overwatering suffocates the roots by drowning them and preventing oxygen from reaching them. As a result, my plants started showing signs of stress, yellowing leaves, wilting, and eventually some plants just rotted away. In contrast, underwatering is equally damaging but in a different way. I also found myself guilty of this when I got busy and forgot about my plants for a few days. When I came back, I'd see dry, shriveled leaves and cracked soil, and by that point the damage was already done. I wasn't giving my plants the hydration they needed to thrive, and I could tell. My vegetables looked weak, and my flowers didn't bloom like they should have. So, how do you strike that perfect balance? The first thing I learned is that every plant has different water needs, and it's crucial to understand those needs. Some plants like to stay consistently moist, while others prefer to dry out between waterings. For example, leafy greens like lettuce and spinach thrive in moist soil, but tomatoes and peppers prefer their roots to dry out a bit before getting watered again. Now, I use a soil moisture meter to help me gauge how much water my plants need. It's an easy and accurate way to measure the moisture level of the soil before watering. I also learned to check the soil regularly by sticking my finger about 2 inches deep into the soil. If it's dry at that depth, then it's time to water. If it's still moist, I hold off. Another key factor to keep in mind is the weather. During hot summer days, plants naturally need more water because they're losing moisture quickly. But during cooler months or after it rains, you'll want to scale back your watering. One of the biggest game changers for me was switching to drip irrigation for my garden. It provides a slow, steady flow of water directly to the roots, ensuring that the plants get just the right amount of hydration. Drip irrigation also helps prevent water from sitting on the leaves, which can promote fungal diseases. It's not only efficient but also less wasteful. I've saved so much water by using this method, and my plants are thriving more than ever. Finally, I also started mulching around my plants. Mulch helps retain moisture in the soil, reduces evaporation, and prevents soil erosion. It's like a little blanket for your plants that keeps them cool and hydrated without needing to be watered as frequently. It also keeps the soil temperature more consistent, which is important for plant health. By getting a handle on watering, I've been able to prevent a lot of plant stress and boost my harvests. So, my advice to you is simple: be mindful of how much water you're giving your plants, and always check the soil before you water. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking more water is always better, but it's the right amount of water that will make all the difference. If you're like me, you probably get excited the moment spring rolls around and you can't wait to start planting. The weather warms up, the days get longer, and you feel the urge to get your hands dirty in the soil. But here's a mistake I made early on: planting too early. It's something that as a newbie gardener I thought I could get away with, but trust me, it backfired big time. Let me take you back to my first year of gardening. After a few months of patiently planting my garden, I was so eager to see my crops grow that I couldn't resist planting my squash, beans, and tomatoes as soon as the first few warm days hit. I thought, hey, the sun's out, it's warm, let's go. But just a few days after I planted my crops, bam, a surprise frost came in, completely catching me off guard. I had no idea it could still freeze in late March. That frost hit hard and wiped out nearly all of my newly planted crops. The squash, beans, and even my young tomato plants couldn't handle it. They froze and withered away, leaving me with an empty garden bed instead of a flourishing crop. That lesson taught me the hard way that timing is everything. Just because the weather feels nice doesn't mean it's the right time to plant. Each plant has a specific temperature range it thrives in, and some, like tomatoes and peppers, can't handle the cold. Cold soil or unexpected frost can stunt growth or, worse, kill your plants altogether. It's important to know your local climate and to pay attention to those subtle seasonal shifts. One of the first things I learned to do after that disaster was to check my local frost dates before planting anything. For example, I now know that the average last frost date in my area is around mid-April. That means I wait until after that date to start planting heat-loving crops like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. If I were to plant them too early, they'd be exposed to the risk of frost, and we all know how that ends. The soil temperature is also a critical factor. Even though the air might feel warm, the soil can still be too cold for many crops to thrive. Cool season crops like peas, lettuce, and spinach can tolerate some cold, but warm season crops need a soil temperature of around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius, or higher to grow properly. If you plant too early, the plants may stay stunted or fail to sprout altogether because the soil isn't warm enough to encourage healthy root development. I learned to be more patient after that frost scare, and now I always check the soil temperature before planting. And here's another tip I picked up. If you're itching to get started earlier, try starting seeds indoors. That way, you can give your plants a head start in a controlled environment, and when the time is right, you can transplant them outdoors. This not only protects your plants from late frost, but also ensures they have a longer growing season once they're outside. Lastly, it's important to respect the natural rhythm of the growing season. Plants have their own schedules and they're sensitive to seasonal changes like daylight and temperature. By listening to those cues and waiting for the ideal planting window, your garden will be much healthier and you'll save yourself a lot of frustration. In short, don't rush the process. Give your plants the best chance to succeed by respecting the seasons. Planting at the right time makes all the difference in ensuring a bountiful, thriving garden. Patience pays off, and believe me, that's one lesson I'll never forget. When I first started gardening, I thought all soil was created equal. If it looked good and felt soft, I assumed it would be perfect for growing plants. But oh, how wrong I was. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on was not paying enough attention to soil health and not amending it properly. I didn't realize that soil is a living, breathing entity that requires care and attention to keep plants thriving. Let me tell you, this mistake cost me plenty of lost harvests, frustration, and wasted time. The problem started when I tried planting in what seemed like perfectly fine soil, only to watch my plants struggle. They were growing very slowly, and some of them didn't grow at all. I assumed maybe I had a bad batch of seeds or that the weather just wasn't on my side. But after a few seasons of disappointing results, I realized the problem was deeper than that. The soil was simply lacking the nutrients that my plants needed to grow properly. Soil is not just a medium for plants to grow in, it's where plants get all the nutrients they need to thrive. And just like us, plants need a balanced diet. Over time, my soil had become depleted of essential nutrients because I hadn't added anything back into it. The soil was missing things like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, key ingredients for healthy plant growth. I was essentially starving my plants and they were showing it. I didn't understand that soil health goes beyond just dirt. The structure of the soil is just as important. I learned that soil needs to have a good balance of sand, silt, and clay to ensure proper drainage, air circulation, and root development. If the soil is too compacted, the roots can't spread out, and water can't drain properly, leading to root rot. If it's too loose, the plants might not be able to anchor themselves well enough, and they could end up falling over or not growing strong roots. After coming to this realization, I started doing some research and learned that amending soil is a critical part of successful organic gardening. The first thing I did was start adding compost. Compost is like a magic elixir for soil. It's rich in organic matter, which improves the soil's structure, boosts its nutrient content, and helps retain moisture. Another trick I discovered was using organic fertilizers. Instead of relying on chemical fertilizers, which can harm the soil and the environment, I opted for organic options like bone meal, blood meal, and fish emulsion. Mulching also became a game changer for me. A thick layer of organic mulch, like straw, wood chips, or shredded leaves, helps retain moisture, suppress weeds, and break down into additional organic matter. As the mulch decomposes, it adds more nutrients back into the soil, creating a natural, sustainable cycle. I also started rotating my crops. Certain plants deplete specific nutrients from the soil, and rotating crops allows the soil to replenish itself naturally. For example, legumes like beans fix nitrogen in the soil, which helps replenish what other plants might have taken out. By rotating crops, I could avoid soil depletion and ensure that my plants were getting the right nutrients year after year. Over time, I noticed a huge difference. My garden flourished, and I had the healthiest harvests I'd ever seen. The soil had transformed from a barren, lifeless medium into a vibrant, nutrient-rich home for my plants. Not only did the plants grow better, but they were also more resilient, pest-resistant, and produced more fruit. If you're new to gardening, don't make the same mistake I did. Spend time amending your soil with compost, organic fertilizers, and mulch. Test your soil's pH and nutrient levels, and work to maintain the balance your plants need. Healthy soil is the foundation of a successful garden, and without it, even the best seeds and weather won't save your plants. Remember, good soil is the secret to a thriving garden. Invest in it now, and you'll be reaping the benefits for years to come. Pests. As much as I love gardening, I've learned that dealing with pests is just part of the deal. In my early gardening days, I was under the naive assumption that pests wouldn't be a huge issue for me. After all, I was growing organically, so I thought the natural balance of my garden would keep things in check. But boy, was I wrong. Ignoring pests completely destroyed several of my crops and left me frustrated year after year. I first encountered this mistake when I planted my first batch of tomatoes and peppers. Everything seemed fine at first until I started noticing that some of the leaves were curling and turning yellow. I thought maybe it was a nutrient issue, so I added some compost and moved on. But the next day, I found tiny little insects on the undersides of my leaves. They were aphids, small, green, and relentless. They were sucking the life out of my plants, and by the time I realized the extent of the damage, the aphids had already spread to nearly every tomato plant I had. The real eye-opener came when I saw my tomatoes wilting and the leaves covered in black mold. It turns out, the aphids had been secreting honeydew, which attracted fungal growth and other pests. I had to pull out most of my plants, which was heartbreaking. I learned the hard way that ignoring pests, even the small ones, can quickly spiral into bigger problems. After that, I became hyper-aware of pests. I realized that leaving pest control to chance wasn't an option. The first thing I started doing was regularly inspecting my plants. It's not enough to just check once in a while, you need to get into the habit of looking over your plants at least once a week. Check for signs of aphids, spider mites, whiteflies, and even slugs or snails, which love to munch on tender leaves. The earlier you catch pests, the easier it is to deal with them. One of the most effective tools I use now is neem oil. It's a natural pesticide that's safe for the environment and works wonders for controlling a variety of pests. I mix it with water and spray it on the affected plants. Neem oil disrupts the pests' feeding and reproduction, and it also has antifungal properties that help prevent diseases like powdery mildew. I spray it once a week, especially during peak pest season, and it's been a game changer. Another method I swear by is introducing beneficial insects into my garden. These natural predators, like ladybugs, lacewings, and predatory beetles, are amazing at keeping pest populations in check. Ladybugs in particular are voracious aphid eaters, so I've made sure to attract them by planting certain flowers like daisies and yarrow. Diatomaceous earth, DE, is also a fantastic pest control tool that I use around the base of plants. DE is a fine, powdery substance made from the fossilized remains of tiny aquatic organisms. It's completely safe for humans and pets, but it's deadly to insects. The sharp edges of the particles puncture the exoskeletons of bugs, causing them to dehydrate and die. I sprinkle it around plants that are especially vulnerable to pests, like my squash and cucumbers. For larger pests like rabbits or deer, I've learned that deterrents like fencing or using natural repellents such as garlic or hot pepper sprays can help keep them away. I've even heard of gardeners using human hair or animal urine to deter critters, though I haven't tried those myself yet. By taking a proactive approach to pest control, I've seen significant improvements in my garden. Not only have I been able to keep pests in check, but my plants are healthier, more vibrant, and producing better yields. And I'm not relying on harsh chemicals that could damage my garden's ecosystem or harm beneficial insects. So, my advice to you is simple. Don't ignore pests. They're sneaky and can do a lot of damage before you even realize it. Keep an eye out for them, and use natural, organic methods to control them. It's all part of creating a balanced, thriving garden that can weather whatever the seasons throw its way. Trust me, your plants will thank you.